Thank you for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, regulatory actions, and political maneuvers in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact your freedoms.
Please support the State of Freedom by becoming a monthly supporter or member of the Warrior Circle, or by advertising your business, your nonprofit, or your event with us. Go to freedomstate.us. We are bypassing the mainstream media cartel and the establishment political parties in Louisiana and coming directly to you, spreading the uncensored voice of freedom across Louisiana and beyond. Tigerland Properties. These are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties, mainly they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing than Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You'll want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment. And they are the best.
Good morning. It's Warrior Wednesday, June 17th at 10 a.m. And this morning we're directly confronting a question many of you have been asking. Why are they coming after Dr. John Fleming? Our favorite Senate candidate, is facing attacks and mudslinging. You've all seen it. Yet he keeps rising by defending the facts and refusing to stoop to their level. Today, the anti-CCS warrior and constitutional conservative joins us live. And if you are a member of the Warrior Circle, call in with your questions or join us in the chat. All right, let me bring forward Dr. Fleming. Oh, and I forgot, y'all. You know, I'm out of place, out of sorts, so just bear with me. But I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander, everybody's favorite bulldog. And we are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network, on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Take a moment to do all those nice things for us. Retweet, share, send a star, send a clap, get in the chat. And
in other words, Danielle, if you can't find us, you ain't looking, right?
Well, we just want you to prove that you've been looking by sending us thumbs ups, right?
There you go.
All right. And don't forget to subscribe so you get notifications when we go live. Always Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 10 Central. And you can catch us later on our audio-only podcast platforms. Welcome, Dr. Fleming. How are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Danielle and Chris. Thank you for having me on today.
We love having you on. And we are going to get into all of the questions that people have been asking shortly. But let me just bring up the scripture of the day. And it's Ephesians chapter 3. I'm usually good and turn to it already. All right. Ephesians chapter 3, verses 8 through 10. And it says this. Okay. Grace alone empowers me so that I can boldly preach this wonderful message to non-Jewish people, sharing with them the unfading, inexhaustible riches of Christ, which are beyond comprehension. My passion is to enlighten every person to this divine mystery. It was hidden for ages past until now and kept a secret in the heart of God, the Creator of all. The purpose of this was to unveil before every throne and rank of angelic orders in the heavenly realm God's full and diverse wisdom revealed through the church. Now, there's a lot packed in there, but what really struck me this morning is through the way we live, we are to be living displays and teachers of the full and diverse wisdom of God to the entire angelic realm. Now, I have never given a single shred of thought to that before, this morning when the Lord brought me to that passage. But the angels, the angelic realm, is looking to us to understand the mysteries of God because the Holy Spirit reveals his secrets to us. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Cry out to me and I'll answer you. I'll reveal to you great and guarded secrets that you could never have known." And that's a promise to the heirs of Christ, to the people. And isn't it amazing that the Lord would work through us to teach the angels about his wisdom? To me, this is just breathtakingly beautiful, and it's a beautiful picture of the role of the body of Christ. And Romans 8:19 confirms it. It says the entire universe is standing on tiptoe, yearning to see the unveiling of God's glorious sons and daughters. And now we know why. Because we're the ones who are to reveal to them the wisdom of God. Isn't that amazing? That's just blowing my mind this morning.
It's absolutely, it really is amazing, Danielle. And it's good to be able to occasionally to recess to things of a higher plane, of a higher nature, like this, when you recognize that ultimately, regardless of how almost guttural, and I look forward to getting your opinion on this, John, almost guttural, these things become, these political campaigns, that we're invited to operate always in a manner that honors God. And it doesn't ever mean that we're perfect. We're all human, but in a way that honors God and honors the angels, for that matter. And I think Dr. Fleming has done that so well, despite the attacks that have been leveled against you. Dr. Fleming, it's such a pleasure to have you with us here today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me, and certainly that's inspirational scripture that we definitely want to take to heart. It also, I think, addresses to some extent the personal nature of the promises made to us, that the guarantee of salvation upon acceptance of his grace it really goes all the way back thousands of years, not just with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and his resurrection, but really the promise that was made that has been ultimately carried out to us, and it's for us to accept the grace that he provides to us.
Yeah, that's so true, John, and it's really powerful when you think about it that way. It's up to us to accept it, but as my mom used to tell us when we were growing up, that John, if you had been the only one on earth, Danielle, if you had been the only one here, I had been the only one on earth, Jesus would have done the exact same thing, just for me, just for you. That to me is just extraordinarily powerful to think about. That it's not just a collective thing. He has that kind of love for all of us, each
Yeah.
of us, I should say.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that kind of struck me this morning about this passage is, and just kind of what it reveals, is that we are to be a display. Our lives are to display. We're becoming more like him. That's how we are able to reveal his wisdom. And so, we're also not static beings. We're becoming, right?
Yeah, very true. It's a challenge, John, and this is going to lead me into my first question for you. It's a challenge to maintain the sort of standard that we strive daily to maintain within the context of this warfare that seems to be occurring in the last 12 days of your political race here. And yet you managed to do so and to focus on the issues and on the record of your opponent while they seem very, very busy lying about you. I mean, demonstrable lies. And one of the issues on which they've lied about you is an issue that is becoming absolutely just in the forefront in these last few days as people begin to wake up. It's this carbon capture and sequestration. And I think that obviously Julia Letlow is extraordinarily vulnerable on that issue for reasons that we know, and you're not. Yet therefore they've tried to lie about your record. Talk about CCS, why it's important, and what distinguishes you from
Sure.
Letlow on this critical issue.
Well, there really have been three phases of going back to the 1980s of trying to demonize carbon dioxide as something evil in our environment. And someone got the crazy idea that the release of CO2 in the atmosphere would ultimately warm our environment to the point that the polar ice caps would all melt, the polar bears would die, that the oceans would rise 12 feet. All of these things, which were predicted years ago and had never even come close to taking place. And so that created an imperative that somehow we have to do something to prevent the release of CO2 into the atmosphere. Even under President Obama, when I was in Congress, he developed a finding through the EPA that said that CO2 is a pollutant to the atmosphere. So, and more recently, of course, this has all begun to fall by the wayside, and even the EPA now has pulled down that idea in its ruling. So, but there have been three phases. The first one, of course, was wind, windmills, turbines. Somehow we would replace ordinary traditional energy with energy from wind. That has not worked out well. The technology for windmills, wind turbines is no better than it was 400, 500 years ago in the Netherlands. And then also is solar panels, which, again, the voltaic cell that was invented back in the early 1800s is barely any better now than it was then. And so neither one of these technologies have worked despite tons. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars of subsidies to make this work. And when I was in Congress, in fact, I asked someone, I said, why does government have to put its money into this? Why don't you just get investors? And they go, because investors won't invest. Well, what does that tell you? It means that it doesn't work and it never will work. And so Obama dumped millions and millions, really billions of dollars into that. But then along came something else that I only learned about a little over a year ago called carbon capture and sequestration. Now, this should not be confused with carbon capture for the purposes of enhanced oil recovery, and it's actually been used for other things as well. And again, capturing carbon is basically capturing the CO2 from the industrial process, whether it's processing oil and gas or whatever, manufacturing, all these different things. And then what you do with it, of course, matters. Well, for 100 years, they've used a small amount of carbon dioxide to sweep out the last 15% of oil in an oil well when it's really going dry. It's a safe technology. It's handled well. It's not the permanent storage of CO2. It's just a temporary use of it. But then somebody got this idea that instead of blocking the flow of CO2 in the atmosphere, we'll actually capture it in the process, and then we'll dig a drill, if you will, an injection well deep into the ground, and we'll put metric tons of this in there, and it'll go along the porous rock and sand for miles around in 360 degrees. We'll cap it, we'll trap it there, and we don't have to worry about it being in the atmosphere. The only problem with that is you could do this for many years, maybe even 100 years, and it's going to be a minimal amount of effect, even if there is an effect of reducing CO2. It certainly wouldn't do nearly as much as seeing more plants and trees and so forth. So, and there's no market for this. Nobody wants to pay for it. So the pay for on this is hundreds of billions of dollars of your tax money at the federal level, something called 45Q tax credits. So this is very new technology. It's still experimental, and it's worrisome because the experiments show common leakages and problems like that. So what happened is in Louisiana in 2020, in the dark of night, when nobody was looking, the lobbyists and the state legislators got together, and they decided to pass a bill. And they did pass it in 2020. It passed unanimously. And it put in place not only the use of carbon sequestration, but also the use of eminent domain, where if a private company wants to, domestic or foreign, can come in and take your land and use it for this purpose, just to profiteer, not for public good or anything that eminent domain is designed for, but only for that purpose. And nobody knew about it except for these small groups of people and the lobbyists and these companies that are wealthy. No telling what kind of things they did to get people to sign on. And then there were a few bills that were passed in subsequent years. And then about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when they began to issue or request permits, we found out what is going on and what is happening. And of course, the people of Louisiana are now alerted to this. They're very alarmed to it. And they're just very concerned that we have a disaster. And to show you how imminent it is and how immediate, I've been informed there are over 200 now lawsuits in place for eminent domain to take land away from people against their will for the purpose of carbon capture and sequestration. And then finally, I'll just wrap up to tell you about the risks. The risk is this: carbon dioxide in that form is dangerous and deadly. If you breathe it, it displaces oxygen. And there's an incident in Sartartia, Mississippi, where a pipeline burst with CO2, and 45 people were overcome with it. Some of them came near death. Fortunately, no one died. But people were found having seizures, foaming at the mouth, unconscious in their cars that shut down because of the gas. And this could happen any place that you have carbon dioxide in that form. If it gets into your water supply, it can create carbonic acid, which will leach heavy metals into the water like lead, and of course it's undrinkable at that point. It could get into your aquifer. And then also you cannot drill through it, so you lose your mineral rights. And so it really takes down the value of your land. And many people, they've owned land for, of course, not only decades, but for generations. But finally, that is the biggest, I think, burr in the saddle that people of Louisiana have about this, is that it gives private companies the right to take your land away from you against your will. And one person told me that the way the process works, because he received this letter, he said, you get a letter in the mail, and the letter
From a
said,
private corporation.
from a private
corporation, not the
Right.
government.
and it says, either sign this contract or we'll see you in court. There's no negotiation. And then I had another gentleman last weekend who told me this. He said, I work on pipelines for a living. He said, do you know how we find a leak in a carbon dioxide pipeline? I said, I have no idea. He said, we walk along the pipeline until we find dead animals.
Oh my God.
So these pipelines can be as close as 500 feet to your home, to schools, and your place of business. So look, the only thing good about this is lining the pockets of wealthy people, wealthy companies, and giving power to politicians. Everybody else, of course, gets not only no value, but they get the risk, the danger that goes with this.
Yes, and they get our money. And they get our money.
Get your money in the process.
Yeah.
So ultimately, just to wrap this up for you, my aim is the first bill I'll submit in the United States Senate is the full repeal of the 45Q tax credits that pay for this. If there's no money for this, this stuff all shuts down immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Now, John, sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
Are you surprised that this has become the defining issue of the campaign? I'm sure whenever you put your hat in the ring, you may not have had any idea that this is going to be what you spent your time thinking about, talking about, fighting about.
No, I didn't know. Had never even heard of the technology. And but when I heard about it, I went to the second meeting that was held by Save My Louisiana. The first meeting I didn't know about, but I heard about it after that. Some folks reached out to me to tell me about this, and if I knew what was going on. I said, no, I want to hear more about it, and I read up on it, and then I went to the second meeting that was held. There have been, gosh, probably 20 or 30 meetings since then, and I've been to many of them. And while I was at the meeting, I learned more. There's a guy named Brad LeBlanc, who is a geologist, who really very carefully explains all these problems and dangers. And but no, when I decided to run for the U.S. Senate, this was not on my agenda. I had no knowledge of it. Now, Jeff Landry and the Letlow campaign have tried to claim that I actually voted for it when I was in Congress. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was always against all of these Green New Deal scams in every shape or form, and we never came across any legislation of anything I voted for. I voted for the straightforward pro-energy bills that all
EOR,
Republicans voted
EOR.
for, and that was it.
EOR, John. And
EOR,
the
yeah.
thing that is so flagrantly disingenuous about what they're doing is that they are, in fact, I think, deliberately conflating enhanced oil recovery, which you did support when you were in the Congress, which with this carbon capture and sequestration. It's just unbelievable that they would compare your action in the Congress with regard to enhanced oil recovery to where we have come now with the explosion of 45Q tax credits, with the routine use of eminent domain, and the burial, permanent burial of just massive amounts of industrial waste under people's property, whether they want it or not. Only people who I think are really people of the lie, which I think your opponents are, could dedicate themselves to such a ridiculous proposition. And I do believe that most Louisiana citizens see through it. But I want to make sure that everybody who is watching this show right now, or will, and it'll be a lot of people, understands exactly what we're talking about here. So currently in the environment, John, I think the environment is 0.004% CO2, less than 0.5%. There are scientific estimates that say if it gets down below 3 or below 0.002%, then plants start to die. I mean, the habitat starts to suffer. I mean, our way of life begins to deteriorate. Okay, so with that premise, nonetheless, in 2020, our legislature declares as a matter of public policy in Louisiana that the reduction of CO2 in the atmosphere is a public and urgent good for purposes of eminent domain for private corporations to come and take people's property so that they can build these pipelines and bury this under their property. The whole thing, John, is an exercise in absolute lunacy.
Yes, it is. And, I've tried to sort of dissect how this came about, because remember that we conservatives, we've been very pro-energy, pro-traditional energy, and supporting energy companies. In fact, I'll just give you an example. ExxonMobil reached out to me I'd say about 2 years ago. I was a newly minted treasurer of Louisiana, and they said there's going to be an attempt by the green people, the crazy greens in California, to actually replace the board of directors and the CEO, that they were going to have some sort of vote, among shareholders and all that. And they asked for my help, and I gave it to them. And we were successful in blocking that attempt. And so, we've thought that we were on the same side as ExxonMobil and others like them, that we're all in this together. We all support the same idea that the Green New Deal stuff is a waste of money. It's a dangerous and ultimately a socialist Marxist idea, because it just pits one class against another. It's always about some crazy idea that we have to be obsessed with and not really doing what's right for the people. Anyway, but what has happened along the way is, because this is such a potentially lucrative thing, that even the oil and gas industry and private individuals and pipelines go, well, heck, if the federal government is going to put this much money out there, even though we don't believe in this crap, we're going to tap into it, because it's going to make investors happy. It's going to make CEOs happy. They're going to parachute out with, of course, big dividends. I mean, this is all about the money, folks. This is 100% about the money. This is not anything about what is good for the people or for the country. And they're willing to go so far so far as to harm the individual landowner and property rights and put people at risk for environmental disaster just for the bottom line. And they've been able to get powerful politicians, Jeff Landry for one, started out with John Bell Edwards, but Jeff Landry now. And I'm sure they see a lot of potential, both political and financial benefits for them. But people who are supporting this are not for the people. There's just no way in the world you can claim to be for the people and support this stupid
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I might just add, if the there's no real once you really dig into this, there's no reasonable explanation other than the destruction of our state. Because if you follow the Q45, the 45Q tax credits to their logical end, it means bankruptcy for the country, right? And
Yes.
if those dollars were invested in something that actually produced oil and gas, that actually moved our state forward, that made us a net exporter, that, built out the industry, then we would be reducing our not only our deficit, but we would be rising as a state instead of basically burying our state under the world's trash.
Yeah, I mean, this is a toxic substance. When you capture that carbon dioxide, you're also capturing other byproducts of oil and gas in manufacturing. So it doesn't stop with just CO2. There's other gunk in that's going into the ground, and it's going to find its way to the surface or into your water. And again, these people just don't care. They just in for the fast buck, and it's just crazy how this has been engineered. I thought, again, wind and solar were bad and stupid, but this takes the cake over all of them. They just no comparison. So we just, we've got to turn this around, and I think we can. What I've heard that this industry has talked about is that there is risk in this for them. There's financial risk, and the thing that they hate the most is anything that delays or in any way makes the permitting harder. And I think this movement, the way it's gone, we forced the governor to issue a moratorium on new permits. Just the other day, SunGas pulled out of their project that they had because they saw that, and I don't know exactly the details, but they saw that they probably weren't going to make any money, and there was just a lot of financial risk. So the higher risk we can make it for them in terms of how we are as a community and whether we want this or not, the more we push back and the more we make it more difficult, especially for the eminent domain piece, which is questionable when it comes. I mean, I think it's outright unconstitutional, that is by the state constitution, to do this anyway.
Yeah.
And you would also find that they would say that we really don't need eminent domain except in very special cases. Well, we already have 200 lawsuits, so that's a lie too. So there's nothing good about this that I can find.
Yeah. Everything that they say, John, everything that they say seems to be totally belied by everything that they do.
Yes.
It's interesting. They say, well, we really don't need, this is really, this is profitable and there is a demand and we can make it successful. Okay, well, then repeal the 45Q tax credits. And then they absolutely will not do that. Of course, to your issue of eminent domain, they say we really don't need eminent domain unless it's extreme circumstances. Then why are all the CCS hustlers like Kevin Ainsworth and all the rest of them lined up down at the Capitol opposing a bill to repeal eminent domain for CCS, and on and on and on. So it's very important that we pay attention to what they're doing, not what they're necessarily saying. And I think that's extraordinarily important.
Right.
Yeah.
And but as you point out, if I can pivot a little bit, you're probably going to do this anyway, is while this was not an issue when I announced in 2024 I was running against Bill Cassidy for the U.S. Senate, it has since become a big issue for over a year. And then comes the entry of Julia Letlow, who is also running for the U.S. Senate, who has welcomed carbon capture and sequestration with uh, wrapping her arms around it, and in fact has said the same about the other forms of alternative energy, the other sort of Green New Deal type energies, wind and solar. We know what that is. So she's embracing it totally. But even worse than that, she has a financial vested interest in this in two ways. Number one, her campaign has been really for the last several months in the attacks against me and in support of her, has been virtually 100% supported, funding provided by the carbon capture and sequestration industry.
Wow.
That's who's paying for these terrible ads that are attacking me, 100% fake, 100% lies. And even more than that, she has a personal financial gain ahead because her fiance, you just mentioned him, Kevin Ainsworth, he's the chief lobbyist for carbon capture and sequestration. No doubt he was actually working on this in 2020 to get it passed into law. And he's also a partner of the law firm, Jones Walker, LLP, which is the law firm that will be the lead on the eminent domain piece of this. So she stands to make a lot of money directly, not to mention how it's supporting her.
Yeah, yeah. Does it stun you, John, on some level? I mean, I have searched and searched and searched to try to find some plausible basis for this grift, and I think it's a grift. It's what RFK Jr. has said, that this is the biggest corporate government grift in American history that will bankrupt the country and destroy the middle class in this country. He's basically saying this will be the end of our country if this is not, if we don't get control of this and push this back. Does it stun you? And I know you've been around a long time, and I know I'm sure very little stuns you, but does it stun you at all that so many people would be tied into something that is clearly a naked scam? I mean, they don't even have the plausible basis at this point to say we've got to do it for the environment. Even that ruse has been ripped open.
Right.
And so clearly it is about lining their pockets with our money, and whatever they have to do to get there, they're willing to do it. Does that stun you at all?
I would say, Chris, on the one hand, I still have difficulty believing it, but yet all the evidence is there. It amazes me why people would run for office and act in a way that's directly contrary to the benefit of the people who put them there. And here's an observation that I made when I first became really your state treasurer, that I didn't pick up on that much in Washington. It's there, but not like I observed here. And it works like this. Whether it's statewide elected office or even state rep or state senator, of course, the first thing people do is they appeal to the voters in their area. They tell them about all the great things they plan to do. They want to fix the roads and bridges, and they want to have better schools and better paid school teachers. And then they're elected on that rhetoric. But as soon as they get to Baton Rouge, somebody pulls them aside and they say, that's not how it works here. Your constituency now is the president of the Senate or the Speaker of the House, or even more than that, the governor of Louisiana. Yeah. You have to make them happy. Otherwise, you don't get the choice assignments when it comes to being chairman of a committee or an important committee. You don't get the facilities at the Pentagon. There's not enough facilities there for every member. Only some get them and some don't. And if you cross the governor, you get dumped out and all that kind of stuff. So they're looking at their lifestyle, they're looking at their future in politics, and they quickly learn that that's your constituency. Those are the people you have to make happy. The people back home, they're not going to know the difference. You're going to go back and tell them that you fought against carbon capture. And we have examples of where people have said that, even though they voted for it every time. They're going to say all sorts of things, and you're going to believe them because you don't have any evidence otherwise. And that's where you guys come in. You actually study the votes and you reveal that. You put it out there. And of course, you upset the apple cart, and that's the reason why state reps and senators often, and the governor gets angry with you, because you're telling the truth and you're telling it to the voters. And I think that next year, there's going to be a new sheriff in town when it comes to people waking up and voting for somebody who is going to support their ideals and not necessarily those of the powerful in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean the lobbyist and the powerful politician leadership.
And we told him, John, on the podcast the other day, we tell all our people, you may have had a plausible excuse before, and we said it very gently. You may have had a plausible excuse before not to vote the right way, not to throw these people out of office because maybe you didn't know, but now you do. We're spoon feeding you everything that you need to know about specifically what they are doing in the legislature, which is very, very different from what they're telling you they're doing in the legislature. And the days of them being able to be inconsistent regarding the two, those days are over. Those days are over.
Yes.
And I think people understand that. And they say, well, why don't you go and, you've got to ingratiate yourself, Chris, to the legislators and to the governor and this, that, the other. I said, look, that's all they ever do. And what has it gotten us? I said, I have no desire to ingratiate myself to the governor. I want voters to know exactly what their rep and their senator are doing in the legislature, because that is the only way a constitutional republic can function. They can't vote, intelligently if they don't know that. Why, John, why is that something that would be some kind of a shock to these people?
Well, and Chris, just quickly, the evidence of that is that a lot of these legislators who have voted poorly that we've called out refuse to show up for public hearings. There are meetings after the legislature breaks, after session gavels out, and people are just not showing up. Legislators are, this is the very important time to take vacations. I get that. I get that a lot of them have worked really hard and they want to go on vacation, but this is your opportunity to go and reflect to your constituents what it is that you did on their behalf for those 3 months in Baton Rouge. And a lot of them don't want to face the music when it comes to that.
And look, I used to, when I was in Congress for 8 years, I looked forward to doing town halls. I love town halls because I'm telling people what I believe and I show it by my voting record. And so I've never been afraid or embarrassed at a town hall, because whether my vote won the day or not, I still voted the right way, and they know it. And let me give you maybe just 3 examples, if I can think of them all, where this has really shown up. Just recently, remember, I'll just say the first one, of course, was 100% vote, unanimous vote for carbon capture sequestration in 2020. And nobody even knew what they voted on for years. But more recently, the vote to flip the Republican 6th district into a Democrat district, I'm pretty sure that was very close to unanimous. There may have been
John, there were a number of Republicans in the House, and I think maybe 6 Republicans in the Senate who voted against it, and we've given them a lot of credit. But yes, it was substantial.
So substantial. And again, who has ever heard of a Republican majority giving a district to from Republican to Democrat, or from Democrat to Republican? It's unprecedented. This sort of thing just doesn't happen. And how could it happen? And there was very little discussion about it afterwards, until things began to come up and there were lawsuits and it went to the Supreme Court. But had it not been for that, we would be stuck with that today. And as far as most constituents would believe, they would think maybe the Democrats were the ones that did that and not the Republicans themselves. And then the third thing is we are in desperate need for insurance reform. And we had one session that was specifically for that, and no real reform was passed. And since then, no reform has passed. And yet and still, they've been promising for years to fix this. So it's very clear that the people controlling the votes are not the voters. It is the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and it's mainly Jeff Landry, who is the governor of Louisiana, who we expected, of course, to be like Ron DeSantis and do great things. But instead, he's taken the John Bel Edwards pathway. He's as much a Democrat as any Democrat governor we've ever had. And it's head scratching. We can't figure out why he would do these things, but it's clear he has iron fisted control of government, not only just the legislature, but he's taken over most or all the boards and commissions. A lot of people have been fired off of them. He doesn't want any dissent at any place in government. And of course, that's why he's targeting me in many ways. So as you see, we're quickly converting from a representative republic in Louisiana to a dictatorship, and one that's run more like a Democrat Party. And this carbon capture sequestration, I think, is at the center of that right now.
No question,
Yeah.
John. I always tell Danielle this when we're on the podcast. The reason why it is such a profoundly important issue, arguably the most important in the last 50 years, is that it is the issue that touches on our money and the proper fiscal stewardship of our money, core private property rights, and our health. All three are directly impacted by carbon capture and sequestration, and that's why it is so extraordinarily important.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
and
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, John, and then I'll go after you.
Well, I was just going to say that I got a request today, a question. How are we going to fix our roads and bridges? And my answer was, just the money alone that we're wasting on carbon capture and sequestration coming out of the 45Q tax credits would renew our infrastructure in Louisiana. Remember, the sequestration is planned. 75% of all carbon sequestration in the country is planned for Louisiana at the hundreds of billions of dollars. What if we took that money and instead fixed our roads and bridges? We would be a much better state as a result of that. But no, we're going to actually make things worse by dumping toxic substances in the ground.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, and I think some of that money needs to be put into reshoring our energy muscle again, because we have done a lot as a state under Bell Edwards to drive oil and gas over to Houston, and that was so backwards and so ill-advised, and we're still reaping the consequences of that today with the outmigration of skilled labor. And so, to me, that's one of the most important things to try and build a bridge back to industry for workable industry that actually stewards the land as well. I want to get real quickly to the chat because it is Warrior Wednesday. And so I have a couple chats here that I'll just go through. Charla said, Mr. Fleming, what's on your agenda to change in Washington for our state, or what is going to be your number one priority? And I think you mentioned that, but for Charla's benefit and anyone who tuned in after you said it, would you address that again?
Well, the first bill that I plan to submit upon being sworn in on January 3rd, 2027, is the full repeal of 45Q tax credits, which will end carbon capture and sequestration. Because that's the only way it's paid for. There's no marketplace out there. There's actually a companion bill already in the House. My good friend Scott Perry, who endorsed me, again, long before this became an issue, but also was one of my cohorts in the House Freedom Caucus, has a bill too. He's from Pennsylvania. And remember that South Dakota and Iowa have shut this down in those states. So we're just lagging behind other states in going after this stuff. So that's number one. The number two thing is Obamacare has totally ruined our healthcare system from a cost standpoint. I mean, when it comes to getting medication, you got to get prior approval. When it comes to getting a procedure or a test, you got to get prior approval. And you don't know whether you're going to see a doctor or a nurse practitioner, and there's nothing wrong with nurse practitioners. I have 3 employed in my clinic, and they do a magnificent job. But yet, in many cases, doctors are not available any longer. Doctors can't operate in private practice any longer. They have to work for big corporations, which means big corporations are telling them how to practice medicine for profitability. And so there's
Yeah.
no competition out there. These are monolithic companies that set the prices, and you basically have to put up with the delays and the lack of service and being on an assembly line in healthcare, and then paying high prices that you shouldn't have to pay. The middlemen and the C-suite is getting all that money. And so what we need to do is bring back competition among healthcare providers. We need to have price transparency. We need to have more choices where you can choose based on quality and cost. And so we need to reform healthcare. We went the wrong direction with Obamacare. And
Yeah.
so that's number two.
Awesome.
John,
And then,
you were. I just want to mention this, Danielle, within the context of Obamacare, that I found it very, very interesting and satisfying, actually, that when Obamacare was being debated in the U.S. Congress, when you were a congressman, with other members of the Freedom Caucus, stood and introduced an amendment or a resolution demanding that if you're going to pass this legislation, basically imposing a socialist healthcare system on America, you should opt out of the luxurious healthcare plans that you operate under here and have the exact same plan that you're imposing on every American citizen. And I thought that, you really forced the issue and exposed a great deal of hypocrisy on the part of the elites, and the politicians in D.C. Of course, it didn't pass, but nonetheless, I thought it was very important to expose that hypocrisy on that level, which is what you did.
Well, Chris, the reaction nationally was unbelievable. It melted down the servers in the House of Representatives. People were all for this, and as you say, it got no traction for an actual vote. The leadership wouldn't allow that to be passed. But it's true. People go, you're inflicting this regulated healthcare system on us. It's so socialized, but also benefiting the wealthy corporations. And yet, and still, you guys, you members of Congress, you still get your really nice, fluffy health plan that is little out of pocket and it's deep benefits.
yeah, along with so many other perks that they get that the American people don't get to enjoy. I also want to mention a couple other, sorry, more are coming in, so I lost my place. Okay, it says, Dr. Fleming is advised by Gary Musgrove, Save My Louisiana. He knows what he's talking about on CCS. Thanks, Walter. And yes, Gary is a treasure. He is absolutely so good. And then Teresa says, people don't know about this site. I don't know anybody who watches it. It's so informative. Thanks, Teresa. Well, be sure and share it. Share it with your friends. Share it in the groups that you're a part of. We love for you to help expand our reach so your friends and family know about us. And Jennifer agrees with her. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. And Charla says, I accidentally saw it. She's thankful and will be sharing it. Okay, they agree with us on the natural resources. And then Teresa asked, she says, have Julia on your show as well. Well, Teresa, we have been openly supporting Dr. Fleming for some time now, so I don't know if Julia would want to come on the show, but we would welcome her if she would want to come on.
Absolutely, yeah.
But let me say, I mean, again, I did a TV interview this morning. I was on Moon Griffon this morning. They all tell me she won't come on these stations. Remember, I challenged her to 3 open live televised debates. She refuses to do that. Julia Letlow only goes to the most friendly media and briefly and rarely takes any questions at all. So regardless of the fact that you guys support me, she would never come on your show given the fact that you actually ask direct and probing questions.
Well, it's important, I think, to do that. And of course, we would treat every guest with respect, but we're absolutely going to ask difficult questions. And on the few occasions recently where she has inadvertently been in a situation where she's been asked a tough question or two, she hasn't really handled it very deftly. John. In fact, her responses, I think, have been either just incoherent or just nonsensical.
Well, she's got several scandals, insider trading, stock trading, to the tune of 210 accounts of that. She, of course, is being her campaign, and she has been investigated by the Department of Justice. And this is very recent. This popped up in March for their fundraising activities, falsifying documentation. That's a big no-no. You can go to jail for that. And on the issues that she's simply completely on the wrong side, of course, she's been quoted as being highly supportive of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which, of course, I'm totally against, and so is President Trump. We believe in meritocracy. We believe you should earn what you get, not be elevated just because of your gender or your race. Again, she's on the wrong side of carbon capture sequestration. Her voting record is weak. It's a liberal voting record, arguably more liberal than even Bill Cassidy's. And so, look, when you got that kind of record, you don't really want to talk about it much on the media.
Yeah, I
One
guess
of
so.
the
And
one of the issues. Oh, go ahead, Danielle. I'm sorry.
sorry, I was just going to read. I'm not trying to step on you, Chris. I was just
Not
going to
at
read the
all.
last question in
Step on
the
me anytime.
in the chat. Well, I'm sure sometimes I do it on purpose, but not today. Not today. Blaze, hey Blaze, good morning. Thanks for tuning in. He says, I'd like to ask Dr. Fleming to communicate his stance on election integrity, same day, paper ballots, no ballot tabulators, no machines, period. Those are all questions.
Yeah, basically, I agree with that entire discussion. I think it begins, though, with a government-issued voter ID, and that's what's in Save Our America Act, which for some reason we can't even get all Republicans to support in the U.S. Senate. But it begins with that. It's ridiculous to have people still on the rolls that have been dead for years or have moved away, and there's no proof that when they go to the polls that that's even the person that they're supposed to be. It starts with that. But yes, with this whole Dominion problem that we saw in 2020 and the flipping of votes and all this nonsense, we've got to get back to voter integrity. So I do support all of those things.
This, John, issue that I want to talk to you about now is an issue that concerns me deeply. You know, trained as a constitutional lawyer and someone who has I think, a reverence and appreciation for the Bill of Rights. FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Julia Letlow has voted routinely to re-extend FISA under the auspices of finding information about foreign terrorist threats. But there's a section in FISA 702 that allows these backdoor sweeps and digital surveillance of American citizens who have committed no crime. No warrant requirement, no probable cause requirement. And I think it is deeply troubling when you look at the history of the Fourth Amendment and the Bill of Rights and the absolute sacrifice that was paid to give us the Fourth Amendment. I mean, James Otis was basically beaten to death in a Boston coffee shop. You know, I could go on and on about the sacrifice that was paid for arguably what is the most important provision in the Bill of Rights. And yet she's routinely voted to extend the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act without insisting upon a repeal of 702 and a return to the warrant requirement. And I just want to get your thoughts on this because I know it's a concern for a lot of American citizens.
Well, remember that FISA came as part of the Patriot Act, which was passed after 9/11 with good intentions, and that did include FISA, as you know, and it has to be renewed every 2 years. We had reports, this is back when I was in Congress, 2015, 2016, that it was being abused, that people were actually wiretapping their spouse, their girlfriend, boyfriend, neighbors, political enemies, and we're talking about flagrant abuses. And nothing was happening to them because there was no teeth in, like, if you did it inappropriately, that something should happen to you. Well, nothing happened. Nobody gets fired. And the way it's supposed to work is that you're only wiretapped or surveilled if you're in contact or while you're in contact with someone from a foreign country. But you see, they were just wiretapping people. They were just simply surveilling people just for their own personal interest and their own personal desires. And to my knowledge, nothing has been done to reform that. And as you point out, Julia Letlow repeatedly votes for the reauthorization of FISA. And I would not do that. Unless 702 is reformed, I'm never going to vote for FISA.
Yeah. And thank you for that clarification on that issue, John, because it's one of those things where how do you possibly justify this? You know, James Madison said that tyranny at home will always be justified by perceived threats from abroad. Well,
Right.
perceived or real threats from abroad. But he said you can never compromise essential liberty
Yes.
for any reason. And I think that's just an important issue. So thank you for clarifying on
Yeah.
the FISA
And
issue.
it's not, and what really irks me, it's not just a theoretical problem, it's a real problem. And it
Yeah.
needs to be solved.
And I would like to see the entirety of the Patriot Act repealed for that exact reason. What you just said, Chris, the entire thing they used 9/11 as a pretext to surveil and make our lives more difficult, to completely infringe on our privacy, and it's unconstitutional.
It would have
Yeah.
never passed, the Patriot Act would have never passed had it not been for 9/11. And that's why we have to be very careful to not overreact to things that happen, because there's always going to be periodically big events. We have to be careful not to go too far in one direction that may give up our personal rights as citizens.
Yes.
And if I
Yes.
might, this is exactly why it's extremely important that your elected officials know, understand, and revere the Constitution. Not only the Constitution of the U.S., but the Constitution of the state, so that they can effectively fight for us. If the candidate you're supporting has never invoked the Constitution, has never even said the word Constitution in any of the ads you're seeing about them, any of the interviews you're seeing about them, that needs to leave a reasonable question mark in your mind about whether they will be faithful to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be, quote, reasons to give up rights. In fact, that's how you get countries like China, which is a surveillance state, is, well, we can make life better for you, but you got to give up certain rights. And what happens is you end up giving up all your rights, and then you get nothing in return. That's
It's
how-
hard to get them back, John. It's hard to get them back. One example that I think that in recent years of an emergency in which you did exactly what you're prescribing here was, I think, in the COVID pandemic, when everybody was, many people were running around coercing and pressuring these vaccine mandates. And while you had your own position on vaccines, you're a doctor historically, one thing you were always consistent on, and I appreciate this about you, is the fact that the government never and nowhere has the right to inject itself in a relationship between a doctor and their patient. And that is a vaccine decision is one that has to be made only in that venue. And so, whereas many people, because of the big issue that COVID was, they forgot the Constitution, and they were all for government mandates, and you never were.
Yeah, as a physician, I've always felt that informed consent is what is correlated with the rights in the Constitution. And whether it's surgery, or whether it's prescribed medication, or whether it's vaccines, they're all the same. Is no one should be forced to take something against their will. I think, now I'm not opposed to vaccines. I've taken plenty of vaccines. My kids, my grandkids take vaccines. but there's a risk to them. And you got to be willing to take that risk just like you would with surgery or with taking medications. Could be side effects to those. And you should be informed of those risks. And that doesn't happen very often, particularly with vaccines. And so what I tell people is your choice. You should have the choice to take, whether it's COVID vaccine or any other vaccine, it should be your choice or the parent's choice in the case of the child, with counsel with a trusted, trained, and obviously a licensed physician. And then it's up to you. And so if something goes wrong, then at least you were informed about it. And on the other hand, if you're not willing to take that risk, no one should require you to take that risk.
Yes. And when you say informed consent, John, you mean that not in a theoretical way, you mean a robust informed consent.
Yes.
Where there is no censorship of information,
Right.
no censorship of adverse effects, no censorship of the positive effects either. But everything out there on the table, and you make an informed decision, and government, you have no right to inject yourself in this relationship. Is that your position on that?
That is my position. And when we say informed, what can go wrong? You need to be
Yeah.
told what can and what does go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like the commercials on TV often give us a better informed consent than the visit to the doctor's office.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's
so
funny.
true.
Some
It's so
of these
true.
ads, they are funny. They'll go, "This can really make your life great." Now your arm could fall off.
Exactly.
Or you may become paralyzed.
Exactly.
But when they say that, the moment they say that, you've got a guy sitting on the beach, all, just absolutely buff, drinking a cold beer. Anything they can do to take your mind off what they're saying right at that moment.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
But
so
I'll
it's
mention-
only there because it's legally required to be there.
Exactly.
They do everything they can to make it like it's unimportant.
100%.
Exactly. I got to ask you this, John, and I'm so glad. By the way, I'm so glad you're here with us because it's just a delight to have you. But I got to ask you this. One of the things that I believe really distinguishes you, one of the many things that I think distinguishes you from establishment politicians generally, is that you have what looks like at least what they're saying, a $293 million surplus in the state right now. And while government bureaucrats are busy trying to figure out how to apply that to a government program or how to inject it back into the government coffers, you have been proposing and pushing for a direct return of that money, of that surplus, directly to the citizens of Louisiana. I don't know whether, and you can explain this, whether it's in the form of a direct refund or in the form of tax credits, one of the two. But you are steadfastly committed to the proposition that that money belongs to the citizens of Louisiana. It does not belong to the government. Why do you think it is that proposal has met with such controversy in our state government?
Well, the mindset I've found among most lawmakers, most people elected to office, is you have X amount of money that's provided in revenue, and it's your job to find where to spend it. And you kind of go, well, wait a second. I don't view that when I was in Congress, I did not view that as my role. I viewed my role as we take in what is necessary to make the country run well, and then everything left over should be money in the pockets of the citizens, because that money will turn over again and again and again in the economy, which will drive up incomes, drive up lifestyles, produce upward mobility, more jobs, wealthier companies that can provide more services to more people. And so, but that's not the way the typical lawmaker works. They just think, well, look, we got to slice the pie up. We've got this amount of money, and let's see if we can find some more. We'll pull some tricks here, and maybe we can even get a little more money. And I can tell you, there's plenty of waste in our state government. Money going through appropriations to NGOs, non-governmental organizations. They come up with some of the weirdest scenarios in order to really just put money in individual pockets. And we've actually found cases where we have had to turn them over to the Inspector General because they're literally stealing money in many cases. They're actually, once they receive the money, they use it for some other purpose than what it's designed. That's why we demand receipts. But what you're talking about is what I said was, look, there was a 290 or so million dollar surplus announced. And what I said is, instead of looking for places to spend it, we can use that now to go back and cut taxes. And if we cut taxes, that means more money in the citizens' pockets, who then buy more goods and services, creating more businesses, better jobs. And what happens from that is even more revenue comes in. That's called the Laffer curve that, Art Laffer, who was the economist under Ronald Reagan, it works. That's what the One Big Beautiful Bill is all about. And yet we're not doing that in Louisiana. That's what I was calling for.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Let me get back to the chat here. And how are you on time? Because I know we've run you over now.
I really just let's hold it to maybe 5 minutes because I've got
Okay.
another meeting.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, great. Well, I'll just address these both at the same time, and you can answer them together. The first one is from Rhonda on Facebook. Hey, Rhonda. She says flock cameras are also unconstitutional. So I think getting your perspective on flock cameras would be good. And then Charlotte says, Mr. Fleming, do you agree or disagree with Secretary of HHS Maha agenda?
Well, let me tackle that one first. I generally agree with Secretary Kennedy, but there's some things I don't agree with him on. For one thing, he's well against carbon capture and sequestration. Totally agree with that. He believes in a vigorous physical lifestyle beginning in youth, just like his uncle John Kennedy did, JFK. I certainly agree with that. I run 3 miles every other day, lift weights 3 times a week, and I'm on no medication. And I truly believe it's because of my very active physical lifestyle. So we generally agree. I agree that they needed to turn the food pyramid upside down. It was too much based on sugary things like cereals, and when it should have been based on animal protein. That's what makes you healthier. But along the way, he's come up with some ideas that he's not really applying to the Department of Health and Human Services that I think probably most physicians would disagree with. So that I think that covers that. As far as the block cameras, I mean, cameras that are out there, again, this is a two-way street. Cameras can be put in, like, I would say, department store parking lots, and they can be a good way used by police to surveil where people are not robbed and that sort of thing. But then the other way, they can be used to see who's running a red light. In fact, I got a ticket about 6 months ago, supposedly running a red light. I didn't realize it because of a camera. I'm in favor when it's done for immediate security purposes, but when it's for surveillance, I'm totally opposed to it.
Yeah.
And one last question, just because this is a good one. When are you coming to Lafayette, Youngsville area? This is Todd in the chat.
Well, I come very frequently. I don't have anything scheduled between now and June 27th, the last day of the election. But we still got some open space. So if anybody wants to do a meet and greet, we've been doing meet and greets. I was in Lake Charles last week, and we had 100 people turning out for a meet and greet, working
awesome.
with Hunter Lundy. And we're getting a lot of support from over there. So but I would say I'm in, other than Baton Rouge itself, I'm in Lafayette probably more frequently than any other city in the state.
Awesome.
John, wherever you have to go, you're just going to have to blame it on the state of freedom, because you can't go without answering this. It's too important, and it's too historically significant. In 2016, you and your fellow warrior Ron DeSantis and other House Freedom Caucus founders came to realize, and it was a matter of record, that the then commissioner of the IRS was targeting conservative nonprofits for discrimination and weaponizing the IRS against conservatives. You and Ron DeSantis and others fearlessly fought that and sought to impeach the IRS commissioner and to strip the IRS of its power to audit American citizens until they demonstrated that they could apply the law equally, both to ordinary American citizens and to elites in Washington, D.C. I want you to talk about that. Oh, and by the way, that resulted in the immediate cessation of the targeting of conservatives, and it was a powerful reminder to me that ultimately even the IRS is accountable to the citizens. But can you talk for a minute about that and why that was so important that you took that action?
Yes, this was during the Tea Party era, and we noticed that the Tea Party organizations were not getting their tax-exempt status issued by the IRS, which they can't survive unless they have it, even though there were left-wing groups getting them very easily. And there was a woman, I forget her name, Lois somebody, that was found to be responsible for this.
Lois Lerner.
Lois Lerner.
Lerner, yes, Lois Lerner. And so there was a new commissioner of the IRS who came on board, and here's where he went wrong. He allowed for all of that information that should have sent her to prison for life, Leavenworth. He allowed it to be destroyed, so there was no evidence against her. We knew there was evidence, it was just destroyed. And so that's the reason why we wanted to impeach him. And of course, even among Republicans, we didn't get, because we were the Freedom Caucus, right? But among Republicans at large, they took no interest in that at all, which I just find to be ridiculous. To be honest with you, that the establishment Republican Party was really hostile against the Tea Party. John Boehner, he would say wonderful things in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, he hated the Tea Party movement completely, because he ended up getting people like me, who was all about protecting the voters and the citizens and not going along with their schemes and their games. So, but the interesting thing is, I was certain that I would be audited by the IRS after this, and believe it or not, they did not audit me. I just can't imagine how I slipped by without an
Well, you know, John, when you directly confront bullies, it has one of two effects. It either results in what you just said, maybe them retaliating against you, or it is a very powerful lesson that this is one guy that I just need to go ahead and leave alone. I think I'm just going to pass this one right by. Yeah. And apparently that was they came to the very wise conclusion in your case and in the case of Ron DeSantis. But I just think it was important, John, because that to me is leadership. That's the kind of leadership that American citizens and Louisiana citizens simply yearn for. And I could go through example after example of similar action that you and the Freedom Caucus took while you were in Congress. But I just wanted to highlight that for you. Right. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to have to run now, but thank y'all so much for having me on. And God bless you for the work you're doing. And again, you're doing a lot of great things, but monitoring these votes and positions on these state legislators is really critical. Don't back off of that. And I know that they bring the heat on you sometimes because they don't like you surveilling them. And surveilling in this case is a positive thing because that is transparency of government. And if you don't have transparency of government, then you don't really have a government at all. You have tyranny.
Well said. Well said, John.
Well, God bless you, John. We will see you soon, and good luck. Blessings in your upcoming race. Everybody get out and vote on June 27th.
Yes. The voting turnout is very low. So look, you know, if you support me or you support conservatism and the MAGA movement, then please come vote.
I've never seen a base in an election at this time under these circumstances that is more energetic than your base, John. And all people have to do is make sure that they go vote. And I tell them it doesn't matter what else you do. It doesn't matter how much you talk. It doesn't matter how much you praise Dr. Fleming. It doesn't matter how many signs you put in the grass or how many events you go speak to. If you don't vote, it doesn't mean a thing.
Right.
So
All
we
right.
got it.
All
We'll
right.
let you go, John. Take care.
Thank you, and God
Thank
bless
you. God bless you. Chris, I am so glad we got, we did extend our time with him a little bit past probably what he had allotted, but it was such a great conversation. And there's a couple other people in the chat that maybe I'll just mention. One second here. Teresa says, would it be wrong to use a surplus on our infrastructure where it's desperately needed? I'm all for reducing taxes. And my response, and chime in, Chris, is we probably have so much fraud in government that we could do both.
I would say so too. And Teresa, I would say that there really isn't. There really that probably would be, in the opinion of many, the preferable alternative, which would be to apply that money directly to critical infrastructure. The problem is that there is no accountability. There is no efficiency. I would love to know, Danielle, the exact amount of money that has been dedicated, quote, to infrastructure in Louisiana over the past 50 years. Yet our roads still remain dilapidated. And so where's the disconnect there? Teresa, my answer is if I knew it was going to go to infrastructure and I knew that it was going to go to real improvement, meaningful, measurable improvement, I would agree with you 100%. But our government is so wasteful and so inefficient, and there's so little accountability. I'm not really sure that that's a practical option right now. Do you, Danielle?
No, not really. Not really. Unfortunately, but I'd love to see true fiscal conservatives that care about the people get in there, and then we could see some things. I'd love to see someone with a red pen, instead of retaliating against the people who stand against him. I'm talking about the governor. Instead of retaliating against the people in the legislature who take a different perspective than him, if he would take a red line to every single NGO dollar that's being spent. Because guess what? If I wanted to donate to an NGO, I would donate to an NGO. I don't pay the legislature to go up there and send my money to an NGO that I don't approve of. So I want to see all that crap cut out.
You've said that consistently, Danielle, that it's not the responsibility of government to sustain nonprofits.
Yeah.
If nonprofits want to survive and do good work, and they have a, quote, product or a service that is meritorious, then they shouldn't have any difficulty getting private citizens to sustain and donate to that nonprofit. But it's not
That's right.
the government's responsibility, especially when our country faces the kind of debt that we face now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see what else is in the chat. Walter was, I believe, saying to Dr. Fleming, see you in Ascension tomorrow. He must be having an event there. I think we're looking at one in Homa coming up soon. I don't really have the details on that yet, so I'll keep y'all posted here. Charlotte says, thank you, bless you. Jennifer says, excellent interview. And Todd says, vote. We got a couple other thank yous. Yeah, Teresa says efficiency has got to be addressed 100%. And Teresa, don't forget, and I'm sure you haven't, that Governor Landry made this big announcement over a year, 2 years ago, right after Trump instituted his Doge. We raised all kind of hay down here and said, guess what? What about Louisiana Doge, Governor Landry? So he made this announcement. He appointed the people, and they did absolutely nothing. They did absolutely
nothing, except Louisiana Doge did absolutely nothing noteworthy, Danielle, except conspicuously exclude our state treasurer from the province of the Doge effort. I can't imagine a serious Doge effort in any state that excludes from its purview the man who writes the checks for that state, the state treasurer. And that should have given many people a pretty strong indication that they were not serious about this from the beginning. And as you said, very little substantive has been done.
Well, and I would also add, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the one main outcome from the quote unquote LA Doge was the Medicare fraud findings, which I believe was a federally mandated review of Medicaid payments anyway, because guess what? We don't get that money from the state.
Exactly. That was federal money. And of course, Governor Landry, certainly sought to take credit for that, but it absolutely was, I think, very disingenuous for sure.
Yeah, Elidius, and apology if I pronounce your name wrong, honey, says, how do we forensically audit the budget? Well, this is a question, Katie, your wife, Chris, has been asking for a long time.
Forever.
We do have there is a legislative auditor, and by all accounts, he's done a good job, but there's probably so much in there that I think he probably deserves a much larger team and maybe a wider purview.
Yes, not Danielle, and what I'm about to say is not a knock on the legislative fiscal auditor, because I do believe he acts in good faith, and I think he's done some good work. But until there is a fully independent, third-party, independent forensic audit of every agency in our state government by a third party, as I said, that is not in any way affiliated politically with any entity in Louisiana, I just don't believe that we're ever really going to tear this thing down hide, hair, and guts, as my dad used to say.
Yeah.
Because even the legislative fiscal auditor can take it to a certain point, but beyond a certain point, it's really no man's land, and he's simply not going to go there, probably for political reasons and relationships that he has in state government. And that's just the reality of it. So to answer Eladia's question, I think that that's what it's going to take.
And one last one here. Todd agrees with us, and he says maybe we can cut out the income tax and have insurance perform. I'm not exactly sure what have insurance perform means, but probably reform. It's probably an autocorrect on your keyboard. Yeah, I agree with that, and we have pushed strong and hard for the removal of the state income tax. There are many legislators who sit in the legislature today who campaigned on getting rid of the state income tax, and absolutely nothing has been done on that front. Vote-wise, people have brought legislation, but it has not been advanced because that is not apparently the will of the governor, nor the speaker, nor the Senate president.
Exactly. Two bills, Danielle, that you and I have talked about, and for the benefit of the person who chatted in, two bills to eliminate the state income tax this session. Were both killed in House Ways and Means, voluntarily deferred. And I think it's very, very sad, because these politicians want the talking points. Again, they want to be able to go home and tell their voters that they're trying to eliminate the state income tax, while in the legislature doing little or nothing to advance meaningful reform to eliminate the state income tax. And so that's really why we exist. But two bills this session that were just voluntarily deferred without any explanation whatsoever by the House Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah, it's just
they're going to figure very significantly on the LeCag scorecard that I hope everyone is on the lookout for.
Yeah, and I'll also add this, Chris, which is you have to watch their actions, and you've said this as well. You have to watch their actions, and their words are meaningless unless they have the actions to back it up. So we are expecting that. And a last comment here, because I wanted to make a point on it. Brian says, I made a post and hashtags on Truth Social with some of Treasurer Fleming's points on this live post, reflecting on the surplus in the Louisiana Treasury and his all but insistence that this money be returned to taxpayer citizens, him aligning his attitude with the spirit of our great President Ronald Reagan. I doubt President Trump will get to take a look at the post, but maybe his staffers will see it. Well, thank you so much, Brian. That's amazing. And we would love it if y'all would all please share the State of Freedom. If you're watching on Facebook, share it with your friends, put it in their inbox, share it with the groups that you're a part of. We would love to if you have enjoyed this, we want to make sure that the voice of truth gets out to everyone who wants to hear it in Louisiana and beyond Louisiana as well, because we think that, the reason the State of Freedom exists is because no one else was doing it.
Because no one else was doing it, and we're bypassing the mainstream media cartels, and everybody can understand and know that we are absolutely unapologetic in trying to speak the truth and to always be faithful in what we say and do to ordinary citizens across the state. That is what we do. Nobody else was doing it, and this is a niche that we are happy to fill, but we rely upon all of you to make sure you share the State of Freedom and encourage people to watch it, because really, if we continue to expand, Danielle, and everybody in the state, every conservative in the state knows that they have access to a portal that is going to tell them the truth about what their government is doing and what their representatives and leaders are doing, it really will revolutionize the way political advocacy and even the electoral process works in the state of Louisiana. And we're getting there, but we're relying on those who are listening right now to share the State of Freedom.
Yeah. So a couple action items. One, share the State of Freedom. Two, if you like what you heard today, if you appreciate the work we're doing and you want to become a part of our inner circle, the Warrior Circle, please go to join.freedomstate.us and help us keep this thing going. And if you are new and you just want to support one episode, go to the tip jar. You can go to freedomstate.us, put a couple bucks in the tip, and let us know that you appreciated the conversation, you love us, and you'll be watching us. And then also, by all means, because we need LCAG, we need Chris at the legislature monitoring and holding the legislators accountable for the way that they vote, for what they say when they're in the committee rooms, and going to lcag.org and supporting LCAG, becoming a member of LCAG is an absolute way to make sure that we can sustain that aspect of our work.
Yep, you have the powerful special interest groups here, you have LCAG here, and we're slowly but surely leveling the playing field, Danielle, in the legislature. And so we made a commitment, LCAG, as you know, when we first started, that we are not accepting any support or any donations from any of the big special interest groups. It's only going to be ordinary Louisiana citizens with relatively small monthly donations, and that's what's going to sustain us. And we made a decision that we would rather have thousands of Louisiana citizens loyal to us and supporting us monthly rather than 2 or 3 big special interests, because that defeats the whole purpose of why we exist, and it would necessarily compromise our ability to tell the truth. And so that's why we encourage y'all to go and join LCAG as monthly members, because as we build our infrastructure, we're going to become more and more influential, and that's what's going to take to return our government to the people. I think we can do it, Danielle, and I feel very, very hopeful.
Yeah, I do too. And maybe just a clarification for people who have been watching for a long time or just new to the show. These are 2 separate organizations. The State of Freedom is the media organization, right? We are the amplification tool. We are the information tool that comes to you and gives long form updates. And then LCAG is the advocacy arm. This is the footwork. This is burning the pavement and making sure that the legislature is held accountable. So those are 2 separate organizations. We do work very well in tandem because both are very important aspects of holding our government accountable and making sure that the people understand what's going on. But we want to just clarify that point.
So it's important share and support both. So share
Absolutely.
and support both, and it's all you need. It's all you got, and it's all you need.
All right, Chris. Well, we had, I think it was an excellent conversation with Dr. Fleming today.
And it was not as normal, Danielle. The Holy Spirit will take you where He wants to take you. About 60% of it was entirely unscripted. But sometimes the Holy Spirit does things His own way.
Yeah, He does. He likes to do things His own way here, and we welcome that. We welcome that. It's always better when He takes He takes the lead. Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful day, Chris. I will see you back right here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless.
Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutters, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business. Cabo Fuego, it's just unbelievable. Whether it's the flame grilled carne asada or a signature mango margarita, I had one of those too. They're serving up a literal feast of freedom at Calle Fuego. It's just extraordinary. I love the owners, Andres and Jose. They run such a great restaurant. The service is extraordinary. The atmosphere is great. So if you're in Pineville and the Alexandria area or passing through, or if you live there, go to Calle Fuego and tell them the State of Freedom sent you.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Any follow-up actions, resources, and links to our sponsors will be in the show notes. All calls to action can be taken at lacag.org. That's LACAG.org.
To learn more about our work, become a monthly subscriber, supporter, or advertiser at freedomstate.us. The State of Freedom, the #1 conservative podcast in Louisiana.